Hello and welcome to Attention Different, Adulting with ADHD. And we're going to be talking about stimulant medication, and this may be something that you are struggling with or someone in your family or your friend group is struggling with, the decision to go on or go off of stimulant medication, or just what the heck is stimulant medication for ADHDers. You came to the right place. We're going to be talking about it all episode today. Aaron and myself, the two of us have had our own on and off journey with stimulant medication throughout our lives. And we have Marlena here, who is pretty fresh to the game, right? Brand new for you. But you have also had your own interactions with stimulant medication up to this point. You have your own experiences with the way that it feels in your body and your mind, and with the rewards and some of the costs that come with taking stimulant medication. Marley and I have worked on multiple projects together in the film world, and I remember... I think I remember the first time you tried stimulants, like period, was on a music video we were shooting. And I'm just gonna give this tiny little anecdote, but I want Marley to talk about her experiences through taking stimulants and, you know, sort of the conversation around your family and friends and your upbringing. But I will drag you back to that time in your life with, I think, the first time you took stimulants. So we were both co-directing a music video and co-producing. And Marlena made it clear that, number one, she wanted to take the reins on this meeting with all of our designers, and number two, that she was okay to try a little bit of stimulant medication, which at the time for me was Ritalin. We'll circle back to this later with Aaron, but it's a very arcane and old medicine. And we'll get back to why I'm bringing this up. So Marlena takes, I think, 5 milligrams, maybe. And we're at a cafe. There's a table of designers and Marlena. I'm off to the side doing other email work, so about 10 feet away. And at one point, Marlena comes running up to me, and she goes, "Oh my God, I finally understand what producing is. Is producing when, like, you can speak all the languages of all the designers at the table and none of them can speak each other's languages, but you can speak all the languages? So, like, when they talk to you, your job is to translate what they're saying to you to the other people at the table, and then, like, everyone they're on the same page." This is as fast as she was talking. And I'm smiling. I go, "Yeah, that is what producing and directing is." She goes, "I totally get it. Also, I think the medication's working." And then turns around and goes right to the table and starts to do her thing. Now, this was Marlena's very first experience on stimulant medication, and it was not in the formal best practices by any means. So, without further ado, for Marley, number one, what was it like taking stimulant medication for the first time? Number two, how did you feel morally about that?
Before I tried medication, I didn't really accept the fact that I am ADHD. I didn't believe fully that it was a condition. In fact, I worked alongside Stephen a lot and felt as though his medication was a crutch. And maybe it was because I saw a lot of parallels in our behavior that I'm like, yeah, I'm struggling with the same thing. Like, this is what everybody's struggling with. That I had such an adverse, like, frustration in believing that, you know, taking medication was almost something that the privileged do. You know, it's just like, it gets them extra time on a test. It helps them further even along. So there was this kind of like, just suck it up and put on your big girl pants. So I kind of had to slowly shed that, and also shed the fear that medication was bad and that medication was actually going to cause more harm.
You had to work through the layers of the stigma that are out there.
Yeah.
And if I may, it was every step too. It wasn't just like the moment before taking the meds. It was once you took the meds. It was watching me take the meds. Because if I remember correctly, it wasn't just, you know, this fact that Stephen takes medication. It was literally, there was a gate at every phase, even to the point where when you understood the medication and how it made you feel, and et cetera, even still there were hangups about like, yeah, but it you know, it makes us talk too fast, or it can make me less emotionally connected. You know, you were actually hypersensitive to the physical experiences of taking stimulant medications in a way that I hadn't been since I was 10 years old. You're an adult taking these, so you know your body better than 10-year-olds and 15-year-olds and 20-year-olds. Talk about it.
I like consistently had been told like, ugh, this generation is just making all these excuses about ADHD. ADHD is not a real thing. They don't have it in France. Like, they don't have this issue elsewhere.
Is any part of this shame-based? Is it fair Because it feels like that. It feels like you were carrying some shame into taking these meds.
I didn't believe the severity of ADHD, and it was for sure not taken as seriously in my family. Attempting to then explore with medication did probably feel a little bit like I'm cheating, or this, like on top of the, is this going to be bad? Like it almost felt like church, I was like, oh my God, is someone watching? Am I in trouble? I don't know if this is what I should do. So when I first took the Ritalin, which was not for me,
Yeah.
I think we learned,
We learned
and
day
we
one.
were,
That was a day one
yeah.
discovery.
And I was being, look, to be fair, it wasn't like I was just like, I'm going to try all this medication. Stephen knows.
No.
I like wrote down, I I wrote down like, this is how much I'm taking on this date. This is what I ate. This is what I had. Yeah, and I think I also was really afraid of my own brain chemistry. I think because of my brother's diagnosis, he's bipolar 1, and
Yeah.
I had sleep insomnia.
I'm just saying that, and that's really fair. Like, if you have complex mental health conditions that run in your family, like bipolar, depression, anxiety, if you have other mental health disorders that are there, you're it makes total sense that you would want to be a little more careful, because even for bipolar, right? If someone has bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 and they take a stimulant medication, for some folks it can be very beneficial because sometimes they have co-occurring ADHD, and we'll get into this in a whole another episode.
For sure.
But for some folks, if they have that tendency towards mania, the stimulant can push them into a manic episode, depending on when they take it, and that can be pretty scary. So it's something to watch out for. It's not, and that is also why we'll just emphasize this for all of our listeners. Don't just go out and try the stimulant medications like it's a party drug or a study drug or
No.
candy or whatever, and think that there's not something serious, because you can have very serious side effects that can happen from this.
This is exactly the reason why we don't experiment without a doctor present, right? Or a psychologist present. This is exactly the reason. It can go from bad to worse. It can, right? We don't want that to be the case. But if there are other co-occurring conditions, it's a bit of a landmine field for any of us here who are not professionals, right? So we, while we are celebrating Marlena's journey, and we're going to do that by pinpointing some moments along her timeline, we are not endorsing every single way we went about it, right? Because there are real categorical risks here for your brain and for your sanity and for your health. So we want to make that super clear.
And also, I did talk to my therapist while doing this.
Hey, great plug. That's awesome. Hey, good practices.
All of the things that I was so afraid about potentially being bipolar was actually my ADHD undiagnosed manifesting. So that's like, there are these like really funny Venn diagrams of the two conditions, and I was so panicked that I was delaying my diagnosis in a lot of ways.
Let's talk now about what it felt like. Okay, you've tried Ritalin, you've tried Adderall, I think you've even tried Concerta. I've tried all those things. Aaron, I'm not sure which ones you have, but I'd like to start with Marlena. What did you physically and mentally feel like when you took those stimulants at those times? Can you bring us back to some of those journal entries?
When I took Ritalin, I'd say, yes, it felt as though I was at a table. I was at a table with a lighting designer, a production designer, a costume designer, and like one other person. And it felt like my brain, all of my thoughts caught up, and it was a little beautiful mindy. It was a little like, oh, I'm consistently always having these thoughts, and now I like see them, and now I can like sift them like Minority Report. It was definitely a little too frenetic for me, but it didn't feel like I was speeding up. It felt like I could see all of my thoughts. Like
your mind actually slowed down enough to parse the thoughts.
No,
Yeah,
like
that's a good question. Was there speed involved?
that's what
That was
no,
a joke.
that's what
That was a
Adderall
bad dad joke. I didn't even mean it. Was there a tempo? Was there a tempo shift?
the there is a distinct tempo difference between Ritalin and Adderall. With Adderall, I felt as though I felt like I was placed back into my body. Like I didn't even realize the entire time. I had always been kind of outside of it, where I was like with a basket, like, oh, I got to do this and I got to pick up this thing and I got to do this thing. And like, don't forget. And like, why am I upstairs? Like, oh, I have to leave in 10 minutes. Let me clean my entire kitchen. Why am I cleaning my entire kitchen? Like, it just felt like I would be led by things and find myself like, how did I get here? Like a video game. That's without medication. And when I took Adderall, I felt like, oh, I'm here doing this task. And you do have to go make sure you pick up that thing out of the car. But you know what you can do? You can go write that down. It was as though I had 17 televisions and radio stations on, and I was able to like turn them all off and go, okay, when I'm done with this thing, I'll go listen to what that is. And when I'm done with this thing, I'll do what that is.
That's sequential. That's like sequential thinking and slowing down and being able to direct your thoughts and your attention onto the task at hand.
Ritalin felt more like if if we're going to go with this metaphor of my brain being like all of these computer screens and like radio stations playing all at once and I'm staring at it like without any medication, I'm just staring at it, hearing all the sounds all at the same time, and it's just all like a mix. It's just like they're all
So,
there and they're all blasting and they're all at the same volume, and so I'm just like picking up words from each thing. Adderall makes me turn everything off and go, listen to this now, listen to this now, listen to this now. Ritalin felt like somehow I could hear like like they were all speaking different languages and I was somehow able to hear all of it at once, which to me was too jarring. Like I was like, oh, I see all of the things that I have to do and I understand it, but like it was just, I just, I slowed down
Interesting.
my brain, but I,
it
it
might
was
have
too
it
much.
might have been it also might have been the first, because it was the first time you took the medicine. And as someone first takes a stimulant, it does change over the course of taking it. So, your first experience taking the stimulant is going to be different than your second experience. And then your first month on it is going to be different than your second month on the stimulant. Your experience can change and it can shift. And we can also develop some tolerance over time too.
Yep.
So your experience changes over the course of how you take it. And I also want to point out, just broadly speaking, there are these two classes of medication, right? What we're talking about with the Ritalin versus the Adderall, there's the methylphenidate variety, which is the Ritalin and Concerta, and a few in Focalin and a few others. And then there's the amphetamine-based medicines, which is Adderall, Vyvanse, Dexedrine. It's a trial and error, unfortunately, process for most people out there, where you try the methylphenidate variety, and then if that doesn't work for you, if it's not jiving with you, then you try the amphetamine variety, or vice versa.
Is one better than the other, or more? Does one have fewer negative side effects? I know the answer, but I want to hear it coming from our in-house expert. Is there a difference between methylphenidate and the amphetamine class that we should be mindful of?
Everyone has a unique genetic profile, and ADHDers, just because you're an ADHDer doesn't mean you will have the exact same reaction. So how you metabolize the medication in your gut makes a big difference. How you process that medication, that can be sorted out. They're actually getting closer to this now. Like I did this for myself, and I've had other clients do this, but I was just curious. So what I did is I took a genetic test for ADHD, and it kind of told me which medicine would be best to take based on
Wow.
my genetic profile. There's a company called GenoMind. There might be some others out there too, but that's the one I use. I went through my psychiatrist and I said, I'm curious about this, because I had heard about it through a client who had done it and they were experiencing, it was recommended through their psychiatrist, and they were experiencing just a lot of trouble with the medicine. They were, they went through all these different trials of different ones, and they weren't finding the right one. So they wanted to get this genetic testing done to help speed up the process of the trial and error, months and months and months of that, right? They wanted to speed that up. So that's what the genetic test can do, is it can actually help you hone in on, hey, this is better for me. And what they do is they kind of give you it looks like a stoplight. It's like red, yellow, green, or something like that, like red, yellow, green. And they say, okay, the ones in the red category, stay away from those. They're not good. The ones in the middle, in this yellow category, you might have some moderate side effects, take with precautions. And then this green one, it's like, hey, good to go. You're fine. These are the best for you.
And again, this is a whole range of medications, right, Aaron? Like a whole range of chemicals that will metabolize well or poorly in our body.
I mean, they just test you for all of the stimulant medications that are currently available on the market and run that.
It was
through.
Specific to ADHD meds. Cool.
Yes, specific. And you can also take that for anxiety and depression and some other conditions too now. So some of the information it gives you is, are you a faster metabolizer, a slower metabolizer, or a moderate metabolizer? If you metabolize a lot faster, you might need more medicine. You might need a higher dose. That's why some people might take 40 or 60 milligrams of something and someone else takes it and they're like, wow, how do you even take that much? And it has nothing to do with body weight. It has nothing to do with height. It has nothing to do with gender. Okay?
Yeah.
So if anyone tells you that, they're wrong. It's all about your metabolism.
Yeah.
And so if you're a slower metabolizer, you probably need less because it stays in your system longer and you're breaking it down. I had a really negative experience with Ritalin growing up. I had this intense mood crash right at the end of the day. Like when I was a kid, started on Ritalin at like age 7, 8 years old. I remember just like I'd come home from school and I would just be cranky and angry and like a terror to my parents and have this intense mood crash. And I always had this aversion to the medicine from the beginning. I was like, oh, I don't want to take this. I don't feel good. It's not good for me. And I was forced to take it right here. Take the medicine. You have to take this. So I had this complicated relationship with the meds from the beginning because, yeah, it helped me a little bit, but then I had these side effects that weren't good. And I didn't realize until later in life. So for me, to get back to your question, Stephen, around like, well, which one was better? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to answer this in terms of an individual thing because I don't think we can say categorically this medicine is better for everyone or this one is better and will be better. It's an individual thing. This one is better for me and my metabolism and my genetic profile and my flavor of ADHD. This one might be better for you. There's some people that do much better on Focalin and Concerta and Ritalin, and there's some that do much better on Adderall and Dexedrine and those ones, and Vyvanse. For me, Adderall was much better. But what I found out when I took this genetic test, I want to find which one is in the green zone, right? I want to take that one.
Yeah.
That was blank. The entire category was blank. There was 0 that were in the green zone. Yeah. So,
as my friend would say, story just got worse. I was not expecting there to be nothing in the green. Okay.
Yeah. So the only ones, the Ritalin was in the red.
Okay.
The Adderall was in the middle section, the like yellow section. Nothing in the green. And that honestly, it didn't surprise me that much. Like it actually confirmed something within me, which I was like,
yeah.
I've always had a complicated relationship with stimulants, and I have always been able to not take very much. I had to do a very low dose, or it kind of triggered anxiety within me. And I felt the side effects much more viscerally.
My family, just inherently, we all have a very sensitive immune system. So, like, when my brother took Benadryl while all the other kids were passing out and going to sleep, he was like bouncing off the walls. Like, so that, like, my mom was very aware of that and cautious because we genetically just had a very different reaction to medication. It is sometimes intimidating to watch commercials and they just very quickly splatter out all of the side effects, and it almost seems like the side effects are worse. And I mean, I know that with my brother taking his medication, now he has to think on how his liver is going to be affected. And I don't know much about what stimulants do to the rest of our organs. I know that it's helpful, and I'm not trying to fold in more fear, but are there certain organs that we have to pay special attention to because of what the stimulants are doing?
Stimulants are generally safe, and the only organ you really have to be careful with is potentially there's two, like your liver and your heart. If you have any sort of congenital heart issue or defect, you want, before you start stimulants, you want to have your doctor give you a full physical, check your heart, listen to your heart, make sure there's no heart murmurs or anything there, or you have any sort of history in your family of that kind of stuff, because stimulants can marginally increase your blood pressure and your heart rate. As you get older, as you become an ADHD who enters into your later 40s, 50s, 60s, you might develop high blood pressure. You might have these other health conditions, and you have to be more careful. With the liver, the stimulant medications are metabolized by the liver and then eliminated through the kidneys. So if you have any sort of pre-existing liver or kidney damage, alcoholism, those kind of things, different medications can damage those organs. Taking stimulant medications can be detrimental to some of those organs. But overall, stimulants are very safe, and you also don't want to drink too much too. So that's another one of the dangerous things. If like people use Adderall or these other things as party drugs, if you're drinking alongside of it, you're potentially damaging your liver. So we have to be very more careful about consuming alcohol and stuff. If it's being processed through your liver, if you're flooding your liver with a bunch of alcohol and it's working overtime for that, you're going to damage your system.
As I'm sure we're all familiar with now, the stranger on the street, the adult who's about to take it or their kid's about to take it, whatever, they'll just rattle off a whole bunch of negatives, right? Like, doesn't it make you harder to go to sleep? Won't it give you migraines? Doesn't it fuck with your diet, right? Like, don't you no longer want to eat or drink things? Does it dehydrate you? And like, there's like a top 10 machine gun spread of like how this will affect you. Will it make you more angry, more moody, more irascible? I think the big ones are like sleep loss and hyperactivity, ironically, right? Because we know the results. If the medicine is doing what it's supposed to, we're not going to be more hyperactive. But you will hear that from people all the time because of the stigma from people who don't have ADHD and abuse the medication, and it does make them more manic, right?
I'll just maybe start, since I started taking the medication recently. I have had to be more conscientious about when I take my medication. It's something that I do have some issues with sleep. It's gotten better. Actually, it's gotten more regular when I'm on medication, weirdly enough. I had some bouts of insomnia, and I didn't even realize that could be and is most likely tied to my ADHD because of just how melatonin is released. But I definitely have to make sure that I am not taking my medication after 2 p.m. specifically. I kind of tried. I would half the Adderall. I can regulate it a little bit more with IR, but if I take it later in the day, I I do it my come down of going to sleep is harder. However, when I am taking it regularly in the morning, I'm pretty wiped out. Another thing that I've had to adjust to is the loss of appetite is real, and being an ADHDer, and especially one in production, it's hard when I'm in the moment to even remember, like, oh, wait, I haven't even eaten anything all day. I should probably do that because now I'm beginning to crash and I might hurt somebody. I get the hangry real bad. When I'm taking medication, I do have to be better about making sure I don't wait until the last moment to eat something. So I've now gotten better about keeping snacks in my car, I almost like have a little diaper bag for myself where like my book bag, I always have some kind of granola bar. When I first started taking it, I did get a little bit of the dry mouth. Ritalin for sure, I felt like my jaw tensing up, and that's also like another reason. I mean, I didn't experiment it with it for a long time, but I felt like my jaw, like I can understand how it's like associated with speed or something because my jaw was tensing and I felt almost like I needed an oral fixation to put my energy somewhere. But with Adderall, I do occasionally get dry mouth, and I do dehydrate a little quicker. So I notice I have to make sure that I'm drinking water. And I don't know if this is a medication thing. And I don't know if this is TMI, but I do have to pee a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always my
Yes.
MO.
I've had to go twice during this meeting, and that is because my body is metabolizing on fire. I mean, and then, yeah.
Yeah. And that's how, I always have to go to the bathroom anyway. I don't know if I have like a hyperactive bladder, but when I'm on medication, I think it's actually less that I have to go more and more that my brain is like, you need to do this, go do it. And like usually I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I'll do that later. And I can forget to eat, I can forget to drink, I can forget to do things. But my brain is like distracted by all the other stuff. Whereas on Adderall, it's like, you need to do this right now. Go do it. Go do it. I'm like, okay.
It does stimulate different parts of your digestive system. We have dopamine receptors in our gut and in other, it kind of activates a lot of that system. And so it is a pretty frequent, it is a not often discussed kind of side effect, but having to pee more frequently is something that is part of taking stimulants. You do have to urinate more frequently. The common side effects with stimulant medications: decrease appetite. That's very real. Marlena kind of talked about how she experienced that. Insomnia or sleep disturbance is another one. Increased heart rate, blood pressure, that's another one. Gastrointestinal issues, upset, that can, cramping, that can be another common side effect, often at the beginning of taking the medicine, or if you take it on an empty stomach. Headaches can occur, especially if you're not staying hydrated. Dry mouth, again, it kind of is a bit of a diuretic in a way, so you need to drink more water. And it probably increases our body temperature a little bit, so that, because if it's increasing our heart rate, we just need to drink more. Mood changes or irritability. Some people can experience some amount of mood swings or shifts, like I mentioned about the Ritalin. As you're coming down off the medicine, you can become a little bit more frustrated or have some emotional fluctuations. But usually they're pretty mild, they're transient, they're not too concerning, right? Tics and repetitive movements, that is something that can happen. Some people can develop some tics. It's not that common, but if someone does take stimulants and they develop some tics, they have to be more careful. Those are the common ones. Now, I think some of the ones that are medications are dangerous and they have lots of side effects. Now, that one is perpetuated a lot by the stigma surrounding abuse, by the FDA's like scheduling of the medication as a Schedule 2 substance, and kind of this view of it as close to meth or cocaine or something like that, right? We've heard those kind of myths, like, oh, isn't ADHD meds just speed or cocaine or meth in a pill? So these medications, just to give people like a brief breakdown of the history here for a second, these medications are not like new, right? These haven't come about in the last 5 years, 10 years. These medications have been around since the 1930s, and Ritalin has been around since the 1950s and 60s. So 1937 was when the first kind of stimulant medication was developed, and it was an amphetamine called benzedrine, and it was given to pilots and people in the military and mothers who were, housewives or whoever who were taking care of their
And we
children.
do not say that flippantly. We literally mean it was given to pilots, military, and housewives.
Yeah, and to be more productive or to stay awake and to do more things, longer. Then in the 1950s and 60s, Ritalin came onto the scene, and that was when it was really started to be used for ADHD. So we've had this medication for a long time, and there are thousands and thousands of studies and research trials. Probably the most, I would argue, the most of any other condition that's out there. We have so many research studies. So in terms of the dangerousness of this, stimulants are not in the category of really being dangerous. They're dangerous if they're misused, if they're diverted, if they're not taken as prescribed. Yes, they can be dangerous. If they're combined with drugs and alcohol, yes. If they're consumed in a way they're not supposed to be, snorted or some other way like that, yes, they can be dangerous. Overall, if you take it as prescribed, they are not dangerous. They are safe, and they've been used effectively to treat ADHD for many, many years. To debunk this myth, no, stimulants are very safe. They've been around a long time. If you think about it this way too, an antidepressant, you're going to feel much worse if you try to get off of your antidepressant cold turkey than if you stop taking a stimulant. So if someone takes a stimulant and they try it for a week, they try it for a few days, and then they take a break, they are not going to experience the same kind of withdrawal side effects. I think they're arguably less than some of the medications that aren't a Schedule 2 substance, that aren't monitored by the FDA. Like if you try to get off of your SSRIs and you do it the wrong way, where you just stop taking it, you're going to feel really bad. You're going to feel really sick. So Adderall and stimulants are not that way. So I think in that way, they're actually safer.
We have got to stop here and talk more about some of this stuff at another date. We're going to jump back into those misconceptions and talk about our experiences that are a little nuanced and might come close to those things, that might help spurn on this idea that there are these mythical negatives to this. It's sort of like simultaneously dispelling myths, but more importantly, sharing with you that we are just as nervous and concerned about these things when we take these meds. We still take them because of the research we've done, because of the research we've had given to us, because of the knowledge that we've empowered ourselves with, that taking the meds and doing all kinds of other things to deal with our ADHD has been the most beneficial so far in our lives, right? So we want to impart that experience onto people while also being very serious about the times when it didn't work so well, about the times that Stephen was taking Ritalin as a youth and having migraines at the beginning of the summer and the end of the summer every year, right? We want to talk about those things while being mindful of the very real fact that there are 3 co-hosts sitting in front of you who endorse the use of stimulant medication and the prescribing of stimulant medication, right? So that is a button we can end on. We are not 3 people saying that stimulants are bad. No. We were actually a few people saying that stimulants are a very powerful treatment tool and complicated and complex, and we want to help our viewers navigate all of that complexity. So we're going to do our best to wrap some of this out in a part 2.